In the previous video, I introduced the concept of duration, and duration is a measure of the sensitivity of a price of a bond to the change in interest rates, basically. So we then went over a number of calculations of how the returns could change when interest rates change. And now I'm going to present some characteristics of duration that are important to know. So first of all, the duration for a coupon paying bond is less than the maturity. That's one baseline thing to remember. So if you remember, for a coupon less bond, a pure discount bond, the duration is equal to its maturity. So let's say we have a pure discount bond with a maturity of 4 years, then that bond would have a duration of 4 years as well. However, for a coupon paying bond, the duration is less than the maturity. So let's say it was the same situation. That bond had a 4 year duration, but now it pays a coupon of 5% twice a year. That bond would have a duration less than that 4 year period or 5 year period or whatever the maturity was. Now, some other factors to consider, just like how when we presented options and so on, we had some characteristics about how some variable changes could result in values changing. Similarly, for duration, if we hold other variables constant, basically, and we just change the coupon value, an increase in the coupon lowers the duration. Okay, so the higher the coupon percentage, basically, the lower the duration will be. So as the coupon increases, the value of the earlier cash flows increases relative to the present value of the terminal cash flow. Okay, so that causes the duration to drop. Okay, the next thing, if we hold everything else constant and just let the interest rate change, so an increase in the interest rate will also lower duration. And finally, the longer the maturity, the greater the duration. Hopefully, this should be sort of intuitive. If you have a 10-year bond, a bond with a maturity of 10 years, you'd expect the duration of that bond to be higher than the bond which has a maturity of 5 years, because you cannot cross the maturity period, right? Duration will always be equal to or less than the maturity. So anyway, the longer the maturity, the greater is the duration. Next, we talk about how we can protect against term structure shifts. How, if that interest rates change, how we could protect our bond portfolio from losing value or from being able to meet our liabilities. It is a major source of risk to bond portfolios, so managers try to devise different ways to address this risk. So one of the ways is by a process called exact matching. And what does that involve? It involves finding the lowest cost portfolio that produces cash flows that exactly match what is required, basically. So a bond portfolio with bonds that have coupon plus principal that exactly match the required cash flows, those will be chosen. So if you look at table 22.3 in the textbook, and there's a liability, you have to pay $100 in year one, $1,000 in year two, and $2,000 in year three. Now, if you came up with three bonds, one which has a maturity of 1 year and that'll have a value of 100, one that has a maturity of 2 years and that has a value of 1,000, and so on. If you create these three bonds into your portfolio, combine them, that would help meet those liabilities. So by exactly matching the cash flows for what you require, you are sort of avoiding any issues that come into play with matching interest rates and so on, because your bond will pay you $100 at that first time period, $1,000 in the second time period, and so on. Now, another strategy that managers do is they actually prefer to have some bonds that pay you a larger amount upfront than what is originally required. So they would take on let's say they have $100 liability in year one and $1,000 liability in year two. They'll pick a bond that gives you $195 in year one, which is more than the 100 required, and they'll keep that extra $95 as an extra safety measure. And then in the second bond period, rather than having $1,000 which is their liability, they'll have a bond that can give them only 900, let's say. and then they use that $95 that they had before in order to grow that money as well to reach the $1,000 liability. So anyway, the basic process of exact matching is find some assets, find bonds that have a coupon plus principal exactly matching what cash flows you required. If you do that, your bond will not have any effects due to interest rates. Your portfolio won't, because you'll be able to pay off your liabilities regardless of what happens. The next strategy is called immunization. Okay, so remember, duration measures the sensitivity of a bond or a portfolio of bonds to interest rate changes. So basically, what does immunization do? It eliminates that sensitivity to the term structure shifts. What is a term structure shift? Which is interest rates moving around. And how does it do that? It matches the duration of the assets to the duration of the liabilities. So if you think of it as an analogous situation, an analogy right here, let's use beta. So we know that beta measures the sensitivity to the stock market. So if you had a liability with a beta of 1.5, that liability basically would be moving 1.5 times whatever the market does. Now, if you purchase an asset with a beta of 1.5, that would basically cancel each other out and result in a zero beta combination. It would be insensitive to the market movements, because if you think about it, the liability is sort of a negative value, so you could think of it as negative 1.5, and the asset is a positive value, which is a positive 1.5, and when the market moves, the 1.5 and negative 1.5 will cancel each other out, and your portfolio will have a zero movement. So similarly is what you do with duration, because you remember, if beta measures sensitivity to the market, then duration measures the sensitivity to interest rate changes. So let's assume we have a single liability of $100 at year 5. Okay, we need to pay off $100 at year 5. So what's our goal? Our goal is to meet that liability, right? To meet that obligation. So what can we do? Let's say we purchased a bond with a maturity of 5 years. Okay. Now, along the way, we are certain about the value of the bond at the horizon, which is, okay, I know what the bond is going to give me at the 5-year mark. Okay. Now, however, we don't know what the interest on the coupon is going to be in the interim period. So we don't know. We are unsure about the rate at which that coupon is invested. Okay. So we're trying to meet the obligation where the principal value and the coupon combine to give us whatever liability we're trying to meet. So let's say there's two possibilities for the interest rates, right? At that point, the interest rates could rise or they could fall. Now, if the interest rates rise, the obligation will be more than met, because now these coupons are being reinvested at higher than anticipated rates. So if we were expecting 5% and now we're growing those coupons at 6%, we're going to more than meet our $100 liability. However, if the interest rates fall, the obligation may not be met. Why? Because our estimation, our anticipated rate is now lower. Our anticipated rate did not come out to play. So we are getting a rate that's lower, and these coupons are going to be reinvested at a lower rate than anticipated. And so in that case, we will not be able to meet our obligation. So in order to avoid these situations, we're trying to immunize our portfolio, which would, no matter what happens to the interest rates, the total will still be equal to the liabilities we're trying to meet. So how does that work? We pick our assets and liabilities in such a way that the duration of the assets at that time, okay, at the time equal to the duration of the assets, the change in reinvestment income exactly matches the change in the value of the bond. So if you think about it, when the interest rate rises, the present value of the bond drops, right? And let's say you have a bond that's longer than 5 years duration, and you're trying to find out what its value is at 5 years. So we'll be at a time before its maturity, and if the interest rates rise, that present value from the 5th year to the 7th year, let's say, is actually lower. And we are trying to pick our assets in such a way that we will match what happens to our reinvestment income, the reinvestment of the coupon, which will actually grow when the interest rate rise, relative to the change in the value of the bond. The value of the bond drops when the interest rates rise, and so we're trying to cancel them out completely. In that case, we've eliminated the effect of the interest rate on that bond portfolio or that bond, and we have immunized our portfolio. So, what is actually going on? We're picking bonds with coupons such that the duration of the bond is equal to the time period in which we have the liability. So if we have a liability, let's say in year 4, if you have a liability in year 4, we'll pick a bond with a duration of 4, a duration of 4 years, right? Duration is measured in years. So now if we pick a bond with a duration of 4, we will be able to meet our liabilities. So let's say now our liability is $995 in 4 years. We've picked bonds with duration of 4. We haven't said what the value of that bond is. The value of the bond could be $995. Then we only need one of those bonds. Okay, but let's say the value of the bond is different. So if we use the textbook example, there's a bond chosen with a value of 165.946 at year 4. So this bond has a duration of 4 and its value is 165.946. But we have a liability of $995. So one bond alone is not going to cut it. We need to have more than one bond. Okay, so in order to meet our 995 obligation, we'll just divide the 995 divided by the value of each bond. So if 995 is the total value and 165.946 is the value of each bond, we divide that, we get 5.996. Okay, so if we have 6 of those bonds that have a value of 165.946, but the duration is 4, that is key. Okay, we matched the duration to the year in which the liability was due. So we had a liability due in year 4. We picked bonds with a duration of 4. Okay, this time we needed $995 to be paid, so we picked 6 of those bonds. If we had a liability of only 165.946, we'd only use that one bond. Okay, now the other thing to note, we also know that a pure discount bond has a duration exactly equal to its maturity. Okay, so if our liability is due in 4 years and we had a discount bond, a pure discount bond, we'd pick a pure discount bond with maturity 4, and that would also meet the requirements. Okay, the duration would automatically be matched because the duration of a pure discount bond is equal to its maturity. So in that case as well, we don't know if we just need one bond or we need multiple bonds. Depending on what's the value of that pure discount bond at year 4, we then divide our liability by that number, and we get our total number of bonds required. Okay, so there's two options. If we have a coupon bond, we match the duration of that bond to the liability, the year in which the liability is due. If we have a pure discount bond, the duration is directly equal to the maturity.